Welcome you all to the 7th week related to the course title History of Arabic Literature. This is the lecture first of the 7th week. We'll be talking today about the Renaissance and the modern period. So first it will be the Renaissance period and the second will be the modern period. The difference we must recollect in our minds, the difference between the Renaissance and the modern as well as contemporary. So there are several terms. They convey sometimes meanings overlapping with some margins overlapping each other, like the Renaissance, the modern, the contemporary, the postmodern, the post-postmodern. So these are different terms which we should be aware of their meanings as well as the differences lying therein. So Renaissance period is usually a period that is projected in a sequence of the time frame, the trajectory of time that connects us. Us means the modern, the present, with the past, like the Middle Ages. So after the Middle Ages and the modern period, the phase is known as the transitory phase. This is also known sometimes as the Renaissance period. In Arabic, it is An-Nahda. In Urdu, we will be using it An-Nashra Thaniya. Although Nashat Thaniya, although these two words, Nashat and Thaniya, are Arabic, they stand for Nahda. So Renaissance is Nahda. Also in Arabic, sometimes we use it as Al-Nahda Thaniya. So after An-Nahda, the Renaissance period, we have the modern period. And after the modern period, we have the postmodern period. So modern is connected to Nahda, and Nahda is connected to the classical, the medieval, the classical in both two phases, that is originally the classical and the neoclassical, because Nahda and the first phase sometimes is equated with the neoclassicism. And the time we are living in, it is the modern, it's also known as the contemporary. And the exact moments, like we around 1980 onwards, it is the postmodern era. So, and as of now, it is the postmodern, as reflected in the literary creations, literary projections, literary theories, especially literary theories, because we have the postmodern philosophy, postmodern literature, postmodern theorizing of language and literature, and then postmodern. So this is the shared ground, some segments of the shared ground between the neoclassicism, Renaissance, neoclassicism, modern, and of course postmodern. In the postmodern and Renaissance period, we're talking like the East-West interaction, al-ihtikak bain al-sharq wal-gharb, East-West interaction, and how it reflected upon the Arab Islamic society. The modern cognitive culture, the modern literary culture, the modern domain of knowledge and its culture, the reforms carried out by different philosophers, different reformers, thinkers, manipulators, and modernization drive, the drive to the campaign to modernize Arabic language and literature. Language and literature, and of course, related to our topic is Arabic language and literature in all its representations, in all its facets, like poetry and the types of poetry, poetic genre, the traditional poetry, the traditional pattern, the modern genre of poetry, the blank verse, the free verse, the modern prose and types of modern prose like Makala and Riwaya and Al-Qissa, Al-Uqsus, Al-Masrahiyya, Al-Sahafa, and Nasira. We might add many things like and Nasira, Arabic literary translations, journalism, drama, etc. So these are the general topics which will be deliberated upon uh, by anyone who aspires to, who aims at addressing the topic in its historical as well as the literary, cultural, and critical, poetic perspectives, etc. The modern period, as we have seen primarily, it came after the Renaissance period. So first it was the Renaissance period and then the modern period. The Renaissance period was initiated by, is to be seen in a socio-cultural and political, of course, international political background that is related to the French invasion of Egypt and Syria from 1798 to 1801. This was the dawn of a new era as regards the modern Arabic literature and literary discourse, modern Arabic thought that had significantly impacted upon the political structure of the Arab world. That was the French invasion of Egypt, Napoleon Bonaparte. There have been several battlegrounds of Napoleon Bonaparte's Egyptian and Syrian war. The battles of the pyramids, the Nile, Cairo, Abu Qir, and Alexandria have been depicted in these pictures. And this is the image of Napoleon Bonaparte. The French invasion of Egypt and Syria in a time frame that extends to from 1798 to 1801. It was a military expedition led by Napoleon Bonaparte during the French Revolutionary Wars. The campaign aimed at undermining British trade routes, expanding French influence, and establishing a scientific and administrative presence in Egypt. Because Egypt actually played a very significant role. It's geographically, of course, it stood significant as per the strategic calculations of the West, represented by its military powers, political powers, uh, Britain and France, and other countries. And of course, it was after that, in the backdrop of the First and Second World Wars, and the establishment of the blocks, Eastern Bloc and Western Bloc, Communist Bloc and Socialist Bloc, NATO and Warsaw Pact, etc. Disintegration of the Ottoman Empire, dismemberment of Ottoman Empire. So before that, we have the some of the events of far-reaching consequences related to the Egypt and Syria or the Middle East. So regarding Middle East, primarily there were the two players. Middle East, two players were there, two countries, the French and Britain, France and Britain. So Britain had its presence and vision and well calculated, well defined military expansionist aims related to chiefly the Indian subcontinent and other regions. And Egypt, when seen in the strategic map of the East, its significance could be gauged very easily. So it was something like having a gateway to East, reaching the Indian subcontinent. Napoleon had also sought to sever Britain's connection to its colonial holdings in India, with the long-term ambition of challenging British dominance in the region. In this sequence, we must recollect the sort of military alliance or initiatives aimed at establishing connections, political support, military support lines between some rulers of India, chiefly Tipu Sultan, Mysore's Tipu Sultan, in order to fight the British. So this is one very significant example of that vision of coordination, cooperation, like military alliance between some Indian states and the French. Who were the rulers of Egypt during the time of the French invasion? Well, in office, it was the Mamluk Murad Bey, belonging to the Mamluk dynasty. This is an image of Murad Bey, the third in this description de l'Egypte, description of Egypt. One of the significant contributions attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte was the work, this significant work, that is Description of Egypt, Description de l'Egypte. It's a work in several volumes addressing different aspects, historical, political, civilizational, cultural, literary, Egyptological, that is related to things related to the history of Egypt in the antiquity, the history of the pharaohs and the past rulers, dynasties. This is Description de l'Egypte, description of Egypt, is a very significant work aimed at studying East. Here, in this case, it was Egypt in some far-reaching, in a plethora of perspectives, plethora of dimensions that had far-reaching impact in molding the course of Orientalist studies, Orientalism, the course of Orientalism and Egyptology in European circles of scholarship. The second ruler at the time was Ibrahim Bey, 1735 to 1816 or 1817. So it was Murad Bey and Ibrahim Bey during the time of the invasion of Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion of Egypt. Well, why Egypt was targeted? Why there was the French invasion of Egypt? At the time, Egypt had been under Ottoman sovereignty, and since the early 16th century, French merchants had been strongly presented there since the 15th century, and France maintained good relations with the Ottomans. So primarily, at the first instance, there were good relations with the Ottomans, good relation of the French with the Ottomans. But Ismail Bey, the Mamluk Sheikh al-Balad, who ruled Egypt on behalf of the Ottomans and was well disposed toward the French, died in 1791 during an epidemic in Cairo. So at that until that moment, everything was okay. Nothing was troubling the French or the Ottomans in terms of the relations or like the foreign policy. But Ibrahim Bey and Murad Bey, when they took power and took actions against the French in the country, there have been some petty matters which have been discussed by the historians. So there were some petty, very small matters related to the trade, like imbroglios, very small one, localized cases. But since Murad Bey and Ibrahim Bey took actions against the French traders, so that actually snowballed into severe, very uh, sensitive matter warranting actions on part of the French, and that again, in due course of time, snowballed into invasion of France, invasion of Egypt. France therefore had two formal reasons to intervene. Finally, the Kingdom of France had been ally of the Ottoman Sultan since 1536 and could claim to want to restore its authority. Secondly, in the French Revolution, France could argue that it also wanted to bring the Egyptians freedom from the yoke of feudal Mamluk rule. So we can simply see that it was the real politic embedded with the intertwined with some imperialist ideology, the ideology of Eurocentrism, and something like the superiority of the concept of the superiority of the Western race, and that in the backdrop of the French Revolution, it was supposed that France has the duty. France is duty bound to bring other nations to the fold of freedom of the imperialist choice, not the freedom as these peoples, the Eastern peoples, Eastern folks, masses had a vision of, rather as per the plans, the vision and plans and expeditions of the European rulers, the European masters. So it was something like the burden of the white man's burden regarding the blacks or the others, the Asian and Africans. Related to this is the Khedivite of Egypt, 1867 to 1914, with Muhammad Ali Pasha adoring the scene with his very powerful presence. So it was Muhammad Ali Pasha's vision and his reforms that kick-started the phase of reforms, Renaissance in the East, at home. In addition to the colonial ruler, the colonial player, that was the French, and at a later stage, it was the British. Because Egypt has been under the French occupation for a very short time, around 3 years or so, and later on the British. So Napoleon Bonaparte had a vision of doing things along with the armada he had carried, accompanied with. He brought with him several other things, including the printing press. The press. He had a vision to modernize Egypt, modernize its military system, its social structure, political administration, educational system, and for the later domains, the primary thing that he needed or he thought to be of fundamental significance and role was press. So he brought the press long before the Bulaq press, which was established by Muhammad Ali Pasha. So before Bulaq press, which is also known as Al-Matba'atul Amiriya, the Emirate press, it was the press that was brought by Napoleon Bonaparte. So it was to modernize the society, the education system, the domains of scholarly works, or the pedagogical matters, teaching, writing of books, spread of knowledge, etc. So for this he had brought with himself the press. Muhammad Ali Pasha. So when we talk about the Renaissance period, primarily there are three very significant names or points of references. First, the colonial, that is the French, Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion. Second, Muhammad Ali Pasha. And third, the persons employed by Muhammad Ali Pasha in order to foster his idea of reform and execute it. on the grounds of the reality. So Muhammad Ali Pasha, from 1769 to 1849, he was the Ottoman Albanian viceroy and governor who became the de facto ruler of Egypt from 1805 to 1848, widely considered the founder of modern Egypt. At the height of his rule in 1840, he controlled Egypt, Sudan, Hejaz, the Levant, Crete, and parts of Greece, and transformed Cairo from a mere Ottoman provincial capital to the center of an expansive empire, big empire. Although his control of Sudan, invasion of Sudan, had very much, it cannot be disassociated with a plethora of political issues appearing at a later stage, which again cannot be disassociated from the later developments we see in the soaring relations between Egypt and Sudan, even in modern times, because he was seen as an invader who had annexed Sudan. But Muhammad Ali Pasha's personality stands tall, is very much central to the very idea, vision, scenario of Al-Nahda or reform in relation to Arabic language and literature. So the Pasha, when we say the Pasha, it is Muhammad Ali Pasha. The French had to withdraw from Egypt because of certain expediencies in Europe. Napoleon Bonaparte had to leave Egypt. This withdrawal had left a power vacuum in Egypt. So the Mamluk power had been weakened but not destroyed, and Ottoman forces clashed with the Mamluks for power. During this period of turmoil, Muhammad Ali used his loyal Albanian troops to work with both sides, gaining power and prestige for himself. As the conflict drew on, the local populace grew weary of the power struggle. In 1801, he allied with the Egyptian leader Omar Makram and Egypt's Grand Imam of Al-Azhar during the infighting between the Ottomans and Mamluks between 1801 and 1805. Muhammad Ali carefully acted to gain the support of the general public. In 1805, a group of prominent Egyptians led by the ulama demanded the replacement of Wali Khurshid Pasha by Muhammad Ali, and the Ottomans yielded. In 1809, though, Ali exiled Makram to Dumyat, according to Abdurrahman al-Jibrati, who was the prominent historian of that time. Makram had discovered Muhammad Ali's intentions to seize power for himself. But Sultan Selim III could not oppose Muhammad Ali's ascension. By appearing as the champion of the people, Muhammad Ali was able to forestall popular opposition until he had consolidated his power. Then, of course, there were some series of wars, 1831, some small wars between rulers of Egypt and the Ottomans. But the Ottomans saw it wise not to extend the series of war, because they had their own troubles, far greater troubles with the colonial designs, with the colonial expeditions in the backdrop of the First World War. So they simply ignored the Egyptian episode. So actually, Muhammad Ali Pasha was the de facto ruler of Egypt, Sudan, and Hejaz, and some part of Syria, Levant, Lebanon, and these. So these areas, as we find, were under control alongside some of these regions. So as it would be appearing that he was able to consolidate power in a very strategically significant segment of Asia, and Asian and African regions. The massacre of Mamluks in 1811 is one of the very significant episodes, well-known episodes of Muhammad Ali Pasha's time. Muhammad Ali Pasha, who had a vision to improve, to reform the things, he was of the considered opinion that the root cause of all the troubles didn't lie with the colonials or colonial designs. Of course, there were these factors. These aspects could not be ignored. But the deep cause for the decadence, for all the troubles back home, were related to the Mamluks themselves, to the remaining members of the Mamluks, who were weakened, but of course they still remained influential in many ways. So, in a well-planned way, a massacre was carried out. He invited the Mamluk rulers, authorities, nobles. He made a point to invite them all over a dinner in his citadel. That is the citadel of Cairo, which is also the Qalat Salahuddin, the citadel of Salahuddin. It's also known now, it's known as Qalat Salahuddin, also Qalat Muhammad Ali Pasha. And he had ordered his generals to kill them all, while these nobles would be just enjoying their feast. So this way he was able to put an end to the entire Mamluk episode in history. There were several Pashas. The Pasha's dynasty, Muhammad Ali Pasha was the first Mamluk, and the last was Fuad II. The formation was in 1805 and evolution in 1953 during the time of the British influence in Egypt. There are the names of the Pashas and their images. It can be seen. What were the characteristics of this rule? The characteristics of this transition from the Mamluk Egypt to Pasha's Egypt that sowed the seed of reform and Nahda. It underlined several things, underscored several things like shift in literature, transition from oral tradition to modern forms like the novel. There was the intellectual reforms, a focus on the modernizing society and grappling with the influence of Western ideas, the political and social developments, emergence of nationalism and new political ideas, cultural institutions, the development of new education systems, publishing houses and professional associations, alongside linguistic reforms, efforts to modernize the Arabic language from new literary and linguistic forms, and having things in new modern perspectives. So An-Nahda actually is characterized with these salient features, and that in turn gets reflected on in the domain of literary discourse. We'll be seeing both in poetry as well as prose. So with this we are coming to an end to this lecture. Thank you.